Well, another update today on the problems with Corpus Christi City water bills and what's being done to correct it. The city's information technology consultant, Peter Collins, says they are hoping to be able to review all the financial transactions to billing office by mid-December. He says the problem of non-working data transmitters failing to provide meter readings is being addressed and is on the schedule. But further investigation revealed that not enough testing or training was done when the new billing system was put into effect a year ago, and as a result, the city failed to send bills worth $500,000 to water customers.
We're already ahead of the game. The 853 people have been contacted. They've been getting heads up that the bills are going to be arriving, and we're currently working on those bills as we speak to make sure we get them out and deliver. And that they're accurate, that they're not being overcharged, or they're not being consolidated or anything like that.
Collins says the no bills are the result of all the problems experienced by the utility business office when the new system was put into place last December. He reiterated that no customer will be penalized because of a late or unpaid bill as part of the $500,000 missing in revenues.